So if you're using time as an excuse for not getting results in the gym, then you are wrong. So where I first came across this idea was when I was reading this book, in which the author promises that you can make vast amounts of muscle gains in a very short period of time using this idea of high intensity training. The basic tenets of which are that you take one set to complete muscular failure per exercise in a session, as theoretically one set on its own is actually enough to promote muscle growth, and performing more than one set is actually going to lead to overtraining and therefore worse results. So this idea isn't exactly new, it's been around since the 70s, and it's been used by some bodybuilders in that time, most notably Dorian Yates, who went on to win 6 Mr. Olympia titles. However, conventional bodybuilding wisdom seems to suggest that volume actually has a causal relationship to hypertrophy, which is the exact opposite of what this philosophy preaches. So I decided to conduct a 30-day self-experiment to see whether I could see the same results that these protocols promise in myself. I was working out my whole body 2 times per week, performing 10 sets per session, each set obviously to complete muscular failure, and each rep at a 5x5 cadence, which is essentially 5 seconds on the concentric on the way up, and then 5 seconds on the way down on the eccentric. So I did that for every rep of every set of each exercise. The exercises that I chose for this were obviously designed to hit every muscle in the body to quite a large degree, and the exercises that I chose were dumbbell pullovers, superset with Yates row, weighted dip, superset with cable fly, cable lateral raise, bicep curl, Smith squat, hamstring curl, wrist curls, and crunch. So probably the most important and the hardest part of actually conducting this was the diet. So I was eating 4 main meals per day with snacks in between. Basically each meal consisted of rice, meat, and vegetables. The basic idea is that in order to gain a lot of muscle really fast, you have to eat a ton of food. Basically I was aiming to gain 1 kilogram of weight per week. So if I didn't achieve 1 kilogram per week, what you have to do is just eat more, up your calories even higher. For some of the days that I did track, I was eating roughly 4,500 to 5,000 calories, which might seem like a ridiculous amount, and honestly it is. If I wasn't eating that amount of calories, I actually struggled to gain enough weight. Most people probably wouldn't need to eat that amount of food. In terms of progression in weights, if you're able to perform more than 7 repetitions of an exercise, then the next session you up the weight until you're able to do more on that as well. That is pretty much it. That's basically the rough framework that I followed. Last night I had a really big meal, like just before bed, and just felt kind of shit like the whole night, like reflux and that sort of thing. Basically shitting a whole bunch, like sucking up a muddy puddle with a vacuum in reverse. As I stated earlier, my goal was to gain 1 kilogram per week of just overall mass, which I was able to do for the first 2 weeks. So for the first 2 weeks, I went from 85.5 kilograms to 87.5 kilograms. However, I found after the 2-week mark, I kind of hit a bit of a wall. I struggled to eat enough food, so I wasn't able to get above 88 kilograms. And that was all very well and good. I was like, oh, I'll eat more and more. I should be able to get about 3 kilograms. Then I got sick, and I couldn't eat anything. I think I lost size even, and that pretty much was the nail in the coffin. For the last week, I was just unable to get anything done. It actually also meant that I pushed back the date of measuring my results a couple of days, because I felt that doing it while I was still sick wasn't exactly representative of my progress throughout this 1-month period. So according to the body fat caliper measurements taken before and after the experiment, I I gained 1.7 kilograms of lean muscle mass and 0.3 kilograms of body fat, which I think is pretty consistent with visually what I noticed. However, I wouldn't expect those measurements to be too accurate. I don't think body fat caliper measurements are that accurate at the best of times, and I'm certainly not the best at administering them. So take that with a grain of salt. In my lifts, I was able to make progress in just about every exercise to some degree, especially in the Smith machine squat, where I actually went from 90 kilograms to 100 kilograms for the same number of reps, whereas other lifts, not so much. However, I think my form got better on some of the lifts as well. So for example, dumbbell pullovers and Yates rows. I think when I started, I went a little bit too heavy and my cadence wasn't consistent. This wasn't a 5x5 cadence on the way up and the way down. By the end of the experiment, I think my cadence was better. The only exercise where I didn't see any progress was the dip. That's because the dip is obviously a body weight dependent exercise. When you put on body weight, that's obviously going to increase the amount of resistance that you're lifting. Technically, my dip got 2 kilograms stronger because I was 2 kilograms heavier at the end. I just don't think I would choose a dip again if I were to do this. That's probably the one exercise that I don't think was really ideal. Visually, I did notice some difference, just a bit of overall fullness and a bit more size. I might throw some images up. And yeah, that's about it. That's the progress that I made throughout this experiment. So, in conclusion, what have I learned from this whole experiment? You definitely can sacrifice volume to a certain extent in exchange for intensity, and certainly I think a lot of people would benefit from doing that, kind of finding that balance. Like Athlean X, for example, have made videos about how intensity is actually just as important, if not more important than this volume idea that we seem to be hearing a lot about lately. It sort of opened my eyes to the possibility that perhaps there is a balance between those two. You know, you don't need that much time to actually make good results in the gym. So if you're using time as an excuse for not getting results in the gym, then you are wrong. If you're on a busy schedule, if you're looking for the most time efficient program, this could be for you. You know, I will continue to use some of these ideas, keeping my workouts probably a little briefer than they were before, and just making sure that I'm keeping that intensity quite high. I think it's also a good idea to periodize your training a little bit, so periods of higher volume and periods of higher intensity are probably going to help you see the best results, as your body won't adapt to either particular method of training and will help you see more sustained progress over time. That's about it. That's kind of my takeaways on this 30-day experiment. But yeah, stay tuned if you're interested in this kind of content, sort of self-improvement, fitness, mindset, all that sort of thing. Got some interesting videos in the works. What else do I want to say?